Hello and welcome once again. We are here with two esteemed guests, members of the league as well. This is an important time. I have this hat from the Department of Justice from time spent as a lawyer last year. And there have been 2 times this year where I've almost had to put this hat on, metaphorically and literally, to deal with problems that the league has put together, either be it from a yikes segment from last week, where the interim commissioner admitted his fault and all was forgiven, or from a trade that has transpired in the last week, where now there are gunshot wounds to about 5 of the men on the Moist Towelette roster, mostly in the hamstring area, and all caused from the Dark Knights. So I'd like to welcome now, of course, our Shadow Commissioner, Alex Opiella, our Interim Commissioner, David Landy, and our 2 esteemed guests, the Dark Knights, Nico Vara. Nico, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, boys. It's been a long time coming. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, well, state radio is proving to be very diplomatic and very democratic, it turns out. So it all comes down to availability. I think the Dark Knights, one of your favorite sayings and one of your mottos as a franchise is the best ability is availability. And here you are, ready to record this podcast. So God bless and thank you for being here. And then, of course, we have the other man, the Pat Man Jones, welcoming to the podcast. Pat, congratulations, another long time, first time. What do you have to say about yourself being on this podcast and the state your franchise is in?
Yeah, thanks for having me, fellas. Good to finally be here with you. Obviously, times for the organization are not great right now. We're starting out 0-3 in the basement here with TDK. But we're feeling all right about things, and we got a big matchup this week. Yeah,
and we'll get into that matchup very soon. And I think we'll go straight from the basement to the attic. Alex, at 3-0 right now, you're at the top of the league. You just handled business against the Dark Knights to put them 0-3. Literally, listen, last week you were talking about how your team was a little flukish. How are you feeling 1 week later after another win proving that Green Eggs and Hummus is here to stay?
Yeah, I guess I'd say I feel similar. It's kind of the same situation where if you look at my team last week, you look at the points each guy scored, you wouldn't believe that added up to 130 points, with a lot of duds in there from, I think, 5 of my first 6-round picks combining for 50 or so points, and Cooper Kupp having 30 of those. So he's carrying my team right now. I still kind of feel like, we might regress here a little bit as far as wins and losses go, but we're not going to apologize for being 3-0. It's a good spot to be in. So we're happy with where we are. Hopefully we can keep it rolling.
Yeah, no apology needed. And David, you don't have to apologize to me when it comes to beating me solidly, fairly, and well this past week to bring you to 2-1 and bring me down to 2-1. Listen, that 200-point week was no fluke. House of Pancakes, they have to be feeling the heat in a very good way right now. The flapjacks are spitting out at a fantastic rate. Business is booming.
Yes, the pancakes are flying right now. We're almost out of syrup at the House of Pancakes. Supply chain continues to be an issue, as it is for so many in this difficult time.
Of course.
Warren, it was a valiant effort. I'll admit I was watching the Monday Night Football game, just with flashbacks to when I had Amari Cooper on my team, and he caught a late touchdown to beat you in years past. And I just thought the fantasy gods were going to come back for me, but we pulled out the win. The 200-point game probably was more of an exception to the rule, but I'll take the performance so far, and I love being at the top of those 4 2-1 teams.
Yeah, and what a strong performance it was. And you're dealing with these issues you talk about the fantasy gods, dark nights, if we could get a moment of your time. It must feel like the fantasy gods are smiting you for winning too much as of late. What's the mood inside the clubhouse? What's the mood inside the headquarters? I know that the personnel has not changed one bit over the last few years. What is President Ernie Adams talking about this week? What's the mood going into a big rivalry match against a wounded Moist Towelette team?
Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to reflect on my draft strategy coming into this podcast, and I went through it and still really have no regrets. I just feel like, a lot of the guys that I drafted haven't really shown up yet this year, and that's reflected in my record. And, hoping that the talent shines through with the guys that I've got, and hopefully I can start, notching some W's.
Yeah. Pat, man, I'm sure you can feel the same way. I know that personnel has changed in your few departments. There have been changes to draft strategists, chief draft strategists, data analytics, things like that. And yet you're still 0-3. And I think Alex and David can speak to it as well. You look at your team, you are still really strong on paper. I know the week one loss was as much of a fluke of a win for me as it was for you as a loss. But what is the mood right now? Where's the panic level at for the Patman Jones franchise?
Yeah, so I think similar to TDK, we're not in full panic mode. As you alluded to, we did kind of change up the draft strategy a bit this year, going RB probably for the first time, which I think has given the team a nice floor. We've consistently been in that 130 to 140 spot, but it seems like maybe getting to that next level is a bit of a challenge for this team. Obviously feel strong at running back and receiver, but quarterback's been kind of weak with Tannehill, and tight end, as it is for many other teams, is tough finding a guy. Tanyan is not looking like the answer, and we had to let him go today.
Yeah, I can't imagine that was a good conversation to have with Robert. I know he was a valued member going into the season, and it's a problem with short memories. What have you done for me lately syndrome. That's how it goes in this league. It's hard-nosed, it's hard fought, and you had to say goodbye. And you made a savvy move in the middle of the games with Mike Gesicki getting picked up. That was a great move, and it looks like it could be. We'll see if it works out, if those targets stick. But I'm getting a little depressed here. Let's get out of the basement for a little bit. Alex, let's talk about your 3-0 comrade. Talk about being on cloud nine with no suspenders, no bungee cord, no parachute, just gliding up there, doing whatever he can to stay alive, and being 3-0 in the process. The Kansas City Quees are up at 3-0 next to you. I know it's a fascinating team to look at, but what's the key to their success right now? I know that matchups are what matchups are, but to be 3-0, you still have to be good at something. What are they being good at right now? Is it just Eric Henry?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a surprising situation when you look at it. I don't know. I mean, really the only two good picks, I'll give him three good picks in the draft between Henry, Waller, and Melvin Gordon, who I think was a great late round pick. The rest of his roster, I mean, Rodgers is Rodgers. He got him where he should have gone probably. Woods has been a bust. Claypool, not great. Devontae Smith, not great. So I think it's really, Henry and Waller carrying him, and Melvin with that value kind of pushing him 3-0. His points against are very low. So it's kind of a similar situation to me where I don't know if it's sustainable. However, I will add that in League of Shadows history, so there have been, 19 teams that have started 3-0 in League of Shadows history, and 16 of those have made the playoffs. The 3 that did not make the playoffs were before we expanded to 6 teams. So basically every team that's gone 3-0 in the 16 playoff era has made the playoffs. So it's interesting to think if that holds, despite John's team being a little fluky and my team being a little fluky, that 3-0 start is really key. And the same thing, unfortunately, applies to the 0-3 teams. I don't want to rub it in for the Dark Knights and Patman here, but there's been 15 0-3 teams in League of Shadows history. Only one of those has made the playoffs, and that was Warren in 2015, I believe. Is that right?
2016, yeah. That was
2016.
my
He won that
Terrell
year,
Pryor
right?
wide receiver year when he had 1,000 receiving yards. Who knew? Literally, who knew? Yeah,
Yeah.
the stats speak to it. I think the Quees are really their key was getting that Chafe Gentleman bust week 1 because they were able to survive that Rogers bust week 1. Having that, and then now having the floor of Rogers and Henry, you can really stay in the game with anything, and no one knows that better than Pat Jones this past 2 weeks ago now, where everything looked like it was turning up Pat Jones, and then all of a sudden Derrick Henry gets rumbling, bumbling, and stumbling all over the place and takes back the matchup. So it's not a yikes by any means for Patman. But
so I would just add, circling back on the 3-0, 0-3 stat.
Let's circle back.
One reason that we've been able to stay optimistic here at PMJ is that there is that additional week of the regular season this year.
That's
So
Wow.
I guess that's one thing that is keeping us hopeful.
It's true. That's a
very
new factor. We have to. Warren, can I add one more stat just to jump on OB's stats? He mentioned the points against for John being very low. I believe he's last in the league, or first, I guess, depending on how you look at it. He's also second to last in points for at 373, and just ahead of him is Nico at 362. So low points against, low points for makes for an interesting 3-0 team.
Yeah, and I mean it's interesting. The point about the extra week is interesting. That could jumble things up. But 3-0 teams, as Alex said, are 3-0 teams. The numbers are stacked against for them, and the numbers are stacked against the 0-3 and 1-2 teams. That's just how math works. We'll talk about math for a little bit because I don't know. I worry that there are some franchises that don't do well with numbers. And I'm going to shoot it over to Alex for our Mad Money segment, where Fab gets spent like it's loose change on the deck of the Titanic, and you got nothing else to spend it on for that last sip of cherry cola before it all goes down. So we'll jump right over to the Mad Money segment, Alex. This week's no different than other weeks. There have been some fascinating moves, and the money keeps flowing.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I for one went to bed last night at peace because I thought it would be a very quiet evening on the League of Shadows waiver wire, and it never disappoints. There's always some nonsense going on. I guess I'll touch on David's pickup of Josh Gordon for $7 uncontested. I'll start by saying I think David made a great pickup with the Saints defense, beating Patman by $1 and beating myself by a few dollars. But to bid really anything on a guy that has been in and out of the league for almost a decade now, he hasn't been productive since he was, 22, 23 years old. Now he's 30. I think that's very questionable. And it makes me wonder, frankly, about the motives of the House of Pancakes. Like, are we just looking for a drug guy? Does Josh Gordon have some hookup that the House of Pancakes is interested in? I think there needs to be some investigation there, because I just don't see $7 being a good investment on him.
No, that's very interesting. And I think, David, I don't want to take the answer from you, but there was a post that went out from Jalen Rager on Monday night, after Monday Night Football, where someone DM'd him and said, I need you to get 13 fantasy points. And then right after, he didn't get those 13 fantasy points, and someone DM'd him back and said, wow, bro, you suck. And he said, send me your address right now. I'll shut you up real quick. Probably not knowing that there were screenshots or screen caps or anything. And I sent that to the Chafe Gentleman. And true to Chafe Gentleman form, he just said, that's the culture here. That's what we want. David, are you trying to build a culture like that? Or what is the motivation?
Yeah, so you're close there. It is, we're obviously hoping that eventually he brings maybe a flex play here and there in the bye weeks, join the Chiefs offense, which has been lackluster to start the season. They kind of find Kelsey and they find Tyreek usually, but past that, they don't have a lot of options receiving. So, Gordon, still an unbelievable athlete, even at 30 years old. And, what he brings off the field is probably more valuable. As everyone in the league knows, I've dabbled in what he has dabbled in. I don't think I need to say anything further. I don't want to incriminate myself or Josh.
It's
I
legal in
know he's in the
Massachusetts, but
program.
you can.
Not legal in the NFL, Warren.
That's
And
true.
Josh Gordon brings a lot to the locker room. The teammates love him. They were pumped. I actually had many of them come up to me saying, like, this is the best signing I've ever had. So yeah, maybe it's not from a football perspective an obvious signing. $7 might have been steep, but I wanted to assure myself the signing, and that's what happened.
Yeah, no, I think that's a reasonable answer, and I think that quiets all skeptical owners across the league about what your intentions were. I think we can continue. Someone who's been very Alex, I don't know, very frugal with their money, dabbling here and there, putting in bids, not necessarily winning the big bids, is or are, I'd say, our two guests, the Dark Knights and Pat Jones. This is something that has been a common occurrence, with the Dark Knights' background in statistics, analytics, and consulting, and the PMJ's background in the same, especially in auditing. Does that come into play when you are guiding your financial departments in making these bids? Because I know right now you guys have some of the highest fab budgets left in the league. Are you waiting for that big splash, that big boom? TDK, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, waivers this year, there really hasn't been that splash, that guy like there has in years prior. I mean, the one guy that was that person was Elijah Mitchell week one, and you scooped him up pregame, so he wasn't out there, and I just haven't seen anyone yet to really toss money on. I mean, threw $8 on JJ Taylor last night. I thought I was going to get him, but he went to Simba for 10. Warren, you spent 10, right? Or 12? 12, yeah. So
lucky number.
It's a good pickup. So yeah, I mean, we're just haven't seen it in the market yet to throw that kind of dough.
Well, you're lying in wait. I can tell.
Yeah, 0-3. I do feel the pressure. I mean, I was thinking about last night. Maybe I got to make a move, but there's not, the guys aren't out there. The league is savvy this year. I mean, people are making moves. Everyone's rostering. Has a solid bench with respect to the Queefs, obviously, but but yeah, I mean, the league is savvy. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think David, we're in sticking to this Mad Money minute. Sane money for you for 1 second. If you could talk about Kansas City, the Here Comes Treble franchise, and they're $100. They have yet to spend a single cent, and they are the only team not to do so, with the Dark Knights trailing them by $1. You have to feel
absolutely
pretty interested about that.
It is interesting. Obviously, Jack has a very strong team, despite being in fourth place. I think league consensus is he has the strongest team as of right now from a pure talent perspective. It got me thinking. He has 0 moves, like you said, which not only has he not spent a fab budget. Nico has only spent $1, but has 13 moves. But it got me thinking about Jack's past when it comes to transactional history. And it made me think about his first place finish in 2017. And I just remember, there was very little moves on his part, especially given the fact that his first overall pick got hurt early on. And I believe that was before we had an IR spot. So I went back to the history, and in 2017, throughout the entire season, Here Comes Trouble only had 7 total roster moves, which obviously is a testament to his drafting ability. So who knows if the fates have aligned again this year? It's too early to tell, but it's very interesting. He's definitely averaged probably the fewest moves out of all teams in league history.
That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
if I could add on to that, not to, I guess, show that I did more research than you, David, but I got some further stats here. So I looked at all of Treble's transactions year by year and found that he averages 16 moves per season. If you look at the league average per team per season, it's about 32 moves a year. So he's at 50% of the league average. Another interesting point here is that we saw between 2019 and 2020, the average moves jumped by 12 moves per team. I'd attribute that to the IR spot, most likely. But yeah, I think it's interesting to see that stark difference between, Bissell and everyone else. Like most teams come in around 30, 40 moves a year. He's always in the low 20s or below that. Is it complacency with him? Is it disinterest? Is it just the fact that he doesn't want to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of the waiver wire? I don't know, but it's definitely a trend that he traditionally makes less moves than everyone else.
No, it's fascinating. And when you think about, sorry, TDK, just when you think about his background.
Chime in real quick. He's just a long-term investor,
I was just going to say, proving my point, he is,
there you go.
In investing. He is a chief investor at, I think Rock Hard Investments or something like that. And
yeah, that's definitely it.
He knows what he's doing, clearly. And it is fascinating. It's interesting to see from a league perspective, the disinterest maybe, or maybe he's too interested. It could be another angle.
I would say, Warren, as another member of the league who's in the financial industry, there's day traders and then there's passive investors. Jack definitely falls into the latter, unlike some other people in the league who, are also in the financial realm, such as Chafe Gentleman, who would definitely fall into the day trader category.
Yeah, a chartered financial analyst, and his moves continue to baffle each week in so many ways. I think we'll finish up this segment with a bit of a discussion on that, where the long journey for Zach Pascal has ended where it began. He's back home at Chief Gentleman headquarters after his bid was accepted last week, then dropped mid-morning, and then brought back later on after T.Y. Hilton was brought on, Terrell Williams was brought on, and then dropped because he has a concussion and is on the IR. And now Zach Pascal is back home safe. So that's
you're also forgetting there was an ad of Darius Slayton in there at one point, I think.
I was going to say, poor Darius. He didn't even last a minute at Chase HQ. He was picked up at 8:28 and dropped at 8:28 a.m. on that Wednesday morning. So feel for Darius. That can't be easy, but Chafe has some wicked tactics over there. So I'm telling
you, I said it last week, gentlemen. I said there's method to the madness, and there's something that goes on behind those doors that we don't want to know about. The league office might want to know about it, might have to look into it, but we don't want to know about it. Out of sight, out of mind. So I think
definitely say the league office is monitoring the new hire, the quant hire that the Chief announced on League of Shadows Twitter today.
Fantastic. No, it's good. That's very good. It should be monitored, and that's a very important statement for the league to make. Now I want to get into this is an off the cuff segment a little bit, but it's you have no right to be talking, but here you are talking about it anyway. It's a segment where we'll start off with the man who shouldn't be talking at 0-3, but we'll be talking anyway. Patman Jones would like to have a second to discuss a problem he sees with one of the leading teams' roster management.
So I guess I have my yikes of the week, and obviously to preface this, I am 0-3 and have already lost to this team, the Kansas City Chiefs. So a little tough to be handing out a yikes to him. But I would have to say their bench has me just uninspired. You know, primarily Boston Scott, I think has like 4 touches through 3 weeks, and could probably be let go. And you know, Devontae Booker also has, you know, just not gotten much love from that offense this year. So I would hand my yikes to the Queefs bench.
Yeah, this is the yikes segment, pretending to be a if you're not talking about it, but here you are segment. TDK, I know it's going into rivalry week. I think it's only right for you to take a few shots at your rival, an upcoming matchup at the Moist Towelettes. What's a yikes that you see from the Moisties this year? A perennial contender, so to speak, until it actually matters.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, you know, this is kind of just a lesson that the whole league can learn by from Moist attitude. Obviously, he had a great week 1, big win, and was quick to anoint himself as the team to beat, and that has quickly evaporated. So, you know, it's a long season, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and probably just, you know, give a yikes to that mentality.
Yeah, and the almost I'll double that yikes before we head over to David and Alex on the mentality he now takes as a defeatist. The whole world's coming to an end. All my guys are hurt. Forget fantasy; it's useless anyway. It's just for fun. We're just having fun out here.
Mm-hmm.
Type of mentality is exactly how you don't end up getting it done by the end of the year. You know, that is my yikes of the week. And Moist, I hope you bring it this week because TDK's hungry. They're starving.
And we're hurting too. Morale is low, confidence is low.
You ever try to attack a hurt lion? Be careful. David, let's go over to your yikes.
Sure. I'd like to put our eyes on the floppy knockers roster. Overall, doing pretty well this year, dealing with some injuries. But my yikes is, again, pointed at the bench here. He has 2 confirmed players that are out this week. One, Chris McCaffrey, one, T. Higgins, big players. And yet not one of them is in his IR spot. It's just gross negligence on his part as a manager, not to just pick anyone up, literally anyone off the waiver wire, and just keep them, you know, out of reach of his opponent. So I know Tom is back in the office working like a dog, but you know, how long does it take to pick up some random defense or kicker? You know, doesn't matter who it is. Just yikes, Tom. Yikes.
Yeah, check your phone at lunch. It's not the hardest thing, but it's that is an interesting one. And I think, you know, injuries are injuries, and he's dealt with them well with having a lot of cuffs. And I think it's interesting, the cuff mentality, David, you didn't go with it this year, and Tom did, and it's paid off like pieces for him, just in the way that he has the cuff for his big injuries. So it's a good on you, Tom, for draft strategy, bad on you for in-season roster management. Alex, let's fire away.
Yeah, so I was gonna go through the occurrence with Chafed and Pascal, but I'll audible and talk about go back to ragging on Moist a little bit. I heard from some of my sources that Moist was up to his old school trade negotiations when it came to the Cooks for White deal. Essentially, you know, we had the trial last year where he basically offered Derrick Henry to Pat Jones. And that's what kind of spiraled that whole thing out of control. It sounds like it went similarly this time, to where it was originally a James White for Sterling Shepard deal, and the Dark Knights was good to pull the trigger on that. But Moy said, hang on. If you throw in Hunter Renfrow, I'll give you Brandon Cooks. And that's how we got to that point. You know, Renfrow looks pretty good. Obviously sucks that White got hurt and is going to make that trade like very lopsided the rest of the year, but that's just how it goes. I guess I'm just going to give Moist's negotiation tactics and ability to not know when to shut up a yikes, because he could have had James White for a lot less.
Alex, I will completely disagree with that, Yikes, because I think it's his inability to not shut up that caused that trade to occur. Because you take a trade deal, you shop it around, you talk to people. You got my number,
That's fair, yeah.
Alex's number. You got the whole league's numbers. Feel free to reach out. We're not strangers. I'd like to think we're friends. I'd like to think I'd give you a fair deal or offer some sort of counter to what you decide to go with. But I got no such text. I think I can speak for the rest of the guys on this podcast right now that we received no such text about that trade. I only heard it from LOS Woj.
And just to follow up on that, I mean, I shopped Dwight around to 4 franchises. I think I spoke to 4 or 5 franchises. And, you know, I think he only spoke to me. So.
Well, you found the best fit and he found you.
Yeah.
So that's how it goes. And I think it's a lesson learned from Moist that he may, hopefully will soon learn. I think, David, I'd love as the interim commissioner for you to just dive right in, because we have a great group of guests for a reason. This is rivalry week. We just touched on TDK versus Moist, but we have truly one of the best rivalries in all of League of Shadows history here with PMJ and Ra's al Ghul. And I know you wanted to talk one-on-one, kind of get a quick chat pre-game with Patman Jones about what he sees in this matchup and also his struggles in years past against Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, thank you, Warren. Obviously, I had the pleasure of choosing game of the week this week, and it was a tough decision. I will say that there's a few rivalries out there, but none quite as contentious as Patman Jones versus Ra's al Ghul. Two the best of friends, roommates, going back years and years and years. And Pat, I just want to get your mindset going into this matchup. Obviously, we've talked about it. You're 0-3. Bob, just ahead of you at 1-2. What is your mindset going into this matchup?
Well, first and foremost, we need to just get a win. So if it happens to be Raz, that's great. But that's kind of the primary focus right now. We've had a tough kind of start to the year, obviously, with Chafe Gentlemen, a strong team, the Queefs, and Simba Corp. But I mean, we're feeling good about this week. We're feeling confident. I think Raz, as usual, has a pretty high floor team. So expecting him to definitely score points, and we're just gonna have to see if we can outscore him.
Yep, that's the name of the game. I guess I just want to give you the opportunity here to speak directly to Roz. I know he's at dinner right now with his parents, having some clam chowder at Legal Seafoods. We're all jealous. We all have things we'd like to be doing. We're all here on the podcast. If you could just say one thing leading up into the matchup with Bob, what would you say to him?
Well, we talk pretty frequently throughout the day. I would say one thing maybe we didn't touch on today is that I think his addition of Jared Cook this week is a complete troll job. I have lost all 3 weeks on Monday Night Football and told him excitedly last night that it looked like our matchup would be decided on Sunday. And then he went and picked up a Monday Night Football guy today. So was that the best addition for him? I don't know. I think there were ulterior motives.
That's a great point. That's the only type of saltiness that roommates could have for one another. The rest of us don't have that level of insight or contact with most people in the league. My last question for you is, will you be watching the games with Bobby at the same time, or are you going to sequester yourself in the war room?
Unfortunately, I think Roz is fleeing the city this weekend, so not sure if he'll be back in time on Sunday. So
Interesting.
we'll have to debrief Sunday night when he gets back. And obviously Sunday night is a big one for Pats fans with Tom Brady rolling back into town.
Yeah, that's an absolutely enormous one. And I think it's interesting from my understanding with this podcast coming to fruition and Roz being unable to make it, he was expecting to get roasted And Pat, you are a gracious roommate, a gracious matchup man, and a good friend, because you did not roast him one bit. That will be for us to do. Let's just get right down to it. Roz is 1-2. Roz is a team that has a storied history, 2-time champion, just like the Dark Knights down there. A fantastic franchise overall, but one that deals with a certain kind of hubris that can only come from winning 2 times in the franchise's history. This is a team right now that I see a lot of issues coming down the pike. There is a lot of usage issues going on with the running backs. Who is the lead back in Jacksonville? It varies from time to time. James Robinson looked like he took hold in the second half last week, but that could change next week. It all depends on the game script. It seems like It seems like Urban Meyer loves his old friend Carlos Hyde a little too much, maybe, but who knows? Justin Fields, look at that disaster. David Montgomery was caught in the crosshairs of that disaster. And then Kareem Hunt, the best cuff in the league, but he's exactly that. He's the best cuff in the league. There was recently a nice sound effects segment where he and Nick Chubb seemed to be very friendly on the sideline, talking about how Nick Chubb just couldn't get it going last week, and it'll be up to Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt did get it done. He had a fantastic week, but Lord knows, and I might find out the hard way this week, Nick Chubb is always there, and he's always ready to run about 6 to 7 yards per carry every single week when he gets his chance. There are a lot of issues. The tight end, we just saw it with the dropping of the keeper. Alex, I can confirm with you, is that the first dropped keeper in keeper history in the League of Shadows?
Well,
so first dropped keeper in the history of the League of Shadows in week 3. That's a tough hit. That's not something you want, because that 14th round, I mean, look who else went in the 14th round. Like, there was value there. And he was handcuffed to Dallas Goedert, who he's now dropped completely. You look at the quarterback situation, what a stud in Matt Stafford, great pick. But then, Alex, you look at a wide receiver heavy team, because you're not one of them because of injuries. But you look at this team that was built to be on a wide receiver heavy situation, and there's disappointment up and down the lineup.
Yeah, I think the Ridley pick for everyone is a bummer this year, at least so far. And I feel some of that as someone who reached for Kyle Pitts too, just being that the Falcons offense is not, I don't know, everybody seems to have this perception in their mind that the Falcons are this high flying offense, but there's a new coach there. Matt Ryan's old, and they're really not that, at least through 3 weeks. So if that's the case, Ridley doesn't have that enormous ceiling that he had last season when Nico stole him in the 3rd round. Before I move on, I wanted to share some history of the Patman-Roz rivalry, because I think it's a very interesting narrative here. So I don't know, I guess in my head, I always thought that Roz had the upper hand when these two teams meet up. However, if you look at regular season matchups, the score, they played 12 times in the regular season. Patman's won 9 of them. So dominates the regular season. But the flip side to that is all the heartbreak that he's suffered at the hands of Roz in the playoffs. This has been 3 separate times. All times Roz was seeded lower than Patman in the playoffs. And all 3 times he knocked him out. So that would be in 2017. Bob as the 6th seed beat Patman as the 3 seed in the first round. 2014, Bob won the championship, claimed that sneezy, ripped it out of Patman's hands when Bob was the 2 seed and Patman was the 1. And then in 2012, going way back to before we were even the League of Shadows, but Bob beat Patman as a 3 seed and Pat was a 2 seed. That was also in the first round. So overall, the matchups, they favor Garrity just in terms of wins and losses. But I think Bob has that psychological advantage from all the heartbreaking defeats that he's inflicted.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Pat, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, you look at those championships, it's tough to think that the narrative could easily be so different. But obviously the postseason is what shapes perception, and perception is reality. So,
It's as simple as that.
Wow.
I think it's important. It's important to understand it in my dissection of the Roz team that you can really never count Roz out. There's always something up his sleeve. That's a franchise that's built on winning. It's built on constant winning. And I think I speak for the whole league when I say it's the same thing with TDK and with the roster that Pat Man's got. It's the same thing as Pat Man. Don't let them get hot, because if they do, and if all of a sudden in week 8 they're 4-4, 3-5, and there are moves to be made, that's a dangerous situation for the rest of the league. And no one knows that better. I think TDK talked about that earlier on in the podcast, where the mood is low, the morale is low, but all you need to do is look at the cabinet and see that there are two championship rings right on the table, and they might have come easier than the next one, but it's never easy in the League of Shadows, that's for sure. And I think, with making moves, I think it's with our last segment before we talk about some of the favorite matchups. David, GM chatter was a hot topic, just like the store last week. Everyone was loving it. And I think I want to bring it back this week. Do you have any chatter on the GM side of things that you can divulge?
Yes, I would love to. I'm obviously not League of Shadows Woj. I don't know who is. But I can smell some desperation in the air. There's some teams that need to make moves, and they're being active, and they're looking to make trades to better their team, to help other teams, perhaps, or perhaps because they have a couple guys coming off IR in a matter of hours. Warren, that would be your team. So what would you have to say to those listening at home, and say maybe you're the GM? What would you have to say to these prospective traders?
Yeah, I think it's great, because last week you had a nice salesman segment during GM chatter, and I'll have one of the same. I'll harken back to one of Alex's old favorite shows, 24. I have about 24 or less hours now to get a deal done for some of the guys on my roster before it all comes crashing down. The depth I built on my bench is something I take a great deal of pride in. And it's hard to see these guys at practice every single day. Bleeding, sweating, just throwing their guts out to our franchise counselor each night. To us, to see them leave would be really devastating. But with that being said, I will do it for the right deal. I am
Simba, can I ask, is Le'Veon practicing now, or is he still trying to get into game shape?
Le'Veon is getting into game shape still. We have yet to receive word from our training staff on that. And here's the countdown. There it is. And the stress has increased exponentially now with this countdown. And it's a dangerous time. Le'Veon is on thin ice, I will say that much. But I believe in him, and he has done wonders to the running back room. So I can't ever discount what a great deal of knowledge and rings can do. He's taught a lot of the young guys, which are a lot, how to win, and that's very important. So yeah, Le'Veon is definitely on the block. There are a few others that might have some tough conversations ahead, but I want to get them out and get them to the right place. I don't want them to go to the wire. You've seen what happens to these guys on the wire. Chafe Gentleman has done it time and time again. These poor players. I mean, do you guys, anyone out there besides Chafe Gentleman, come on. You really want to see some of these great guys get left in and get picked up by the Chafe Gentleman only to be tortured like they were allegedly last year at TDK. You can't let that happen. So please reach out to me. I'd love to talk. I'm always available, and I'm always a fair dealer. We'll get something done, and we'll work on it hard and fast. So David, thank you very much for that. That is the GM chatter, and it's coming from one voice, because I think I've reached out to everyone besides my week 4 opponent out of pure respect, because otherwise there would be a weird deal going forward. And God knows if I get Damian Harris, he'll go for 30, or if I give Alex a wide receiver, he'll go for 45. That's just the way that life works. So guys, just to finish up, we want to finish up here nice and strong. Alex, I want to get your, we get to go through all of them. And we take this is kind of a draft pick type thing. I want to give you the first pick of your favorite matchup going into this week, the non-game of the week matchup.
Sure. So I'll go with kind of picking off the cuff here. I'm going to take Here Comes Treble versus the Floppy Knockers.
Love that.
Mainly because this is such a mean-spirited rivalry between these two. They're both very cutthroat, unforgiving individuals that have had bad blood going back for years. Definitely not two of the nicer and most pleasant guys in the league. So I think it'll be a good one. Bissell, as we've touched on, he seems to have the best roster, but Tom with those handcuffs, if they can fill in, he's still got the ability to take him down. So, I don't know. So you got to figure Treble's ceiling's going to lower eventually. And, if Tom could get this win, that would be huge for him going forward.
Yeah, as I said earlier today, what can't be said? What can be said about Here Comes Treble and Floppy Knockers that already hasn't been said about the Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda in the early 90s. It's a very, very challenging rivalry, and good on you to the commissioner, the shadow commissioner, and the interim for keeping those guys apart at the draft as well. I thought that was a really good chance to, when the beer gets flowing, when those K's get flowing, God knows what those two could get up to against each other. So good on you guys for making sure that didn't happen. David, let's roll right over to you. That's a great matchup because it has playoff implications. Even at 3-1, you're in a great spot. What else are you looking at? Maybe in the opposite direction, maybe in some of the 1 and 2 games that are maybe it doesn't reek of desperation, but you can kind of smell it. It's coming through the vents a little bit.
I definitely like to highlight one Chase Gelman versus Paulette Jaboy, both 1 and 2. Paul's in 7th, Pat's in 10th. They're two teams that have kind of been up and down. They've shown what they can do. They've shown what they can't do. So this is a big week to really highlight, whether they're going to be pushing forward and making a playoff push or, kind of falling into that bottom tier of teams. And I agree, Warren, just on your point about separating rivals at the draft. It was actually one of the first things that Al told me when I took the interim commissioner job. There's certain people you got to keep apart at the draft. Pat and Bobby, Nico and Chris. But most of all, it was Jack and Tom.
Yeah.
They can't sit next to each other.
Yeah, if you learn nothing else from Alex in your interim time, that's really all you need. Making sure that happens. And again, congratulations on getting that done. We'll see what happens this week with that rivalry. TDK, I love your analysis. I love your input on House of Pancakes' matchup this week. He's high flying after losing the first game against the Floppy Knockers. He has won 2 games in resounding fashion. Now he heads into a matchup this week against the KCQs. What do you see in this matchup, and do you see a chance for 2 3-1 teams when it's all said and done, or do you see a potential for a 4-0 stalwart and a 2-2 middler?
Yeah, this is another great matchup. I'm just pulling it up here. Two high flying tight ends with Waller and Hawkinson. It's hard to not go with HOP here, but Casey Queefs continues to shock week in and week out. So, if Henry can show up and have another one of those big games, and Gordon continues to impress, and Woods has been underperforming as well. It'll be close. I don't know. I haven't been following what's going on with Lockett, David, but hopefully he's healthy. And got to go with HOP here, but at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if Queefs, pulls this one out.
Yeah, there's definitely some guys lying in wait on the KCQ side, waiting to bust out. We've all seen and know from Alex's success, the Hamo success on the fairy tale that's going on between Stafford and Cup. PMJ, I for one hope that fairy tale ends very quickly. But you got the two guys on for this matchup. You got us right here. Give it to us straight. Let me hear from you what you really, really think about this matchup. You weren't ready to go into Kansas City Queefs' roster management construction. Don't be afraid to tell us the straight truth.
Yeah, I guess I was getting ready to touch upon TDK and Moist, but I will.
That's for me. Thank you.
I guess move over to this matchup. Obviously you guys are at the opposite end of the leaderboard. Obviously, I mean, Cup has been an absolute beast this year. I think he's wide receiver 1 by 15 plus points. Obviously, Pitts has been a little disappointing for Alex, but I think Waddle's been a bright spot down in Miami, and I feel like Hamos definitely needs JT to get going, so this could maybe be a good spot for that against Miami. Simba obviously on the hunt for running backs. Receivers are strong. I think I don't know. I probably would take Simba in this matchup. Just with the receivers, I just think your floor is very high week in and week out. But I mean, hey, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see is right. And I think, I'll get less analytical for a second about the matchup that I'd like to talk about. It's TDK versus Moist. It doesn't matter the players that are out there for either team. This is a blood in the water game. This is who wants it more. And I have to rely on history with this one. TDK has shown that they want it more year in and year out. Forget year in and year out. Week in and week out, they've shown they want it more. And the attitude that I'm getting from Moist needs to change, and needs to change right now, because it's almost Thursday night. We got Thursday night football, and then right off the bat, it gets to be Sunday. And I'll tell you, Moist, you can't be sleeping in. You got to be ready. You got to be ready and willing to go to the mats for your team. You got some issues. You got some of the guys taken out to the woodshed and hit for all they got last week. But you got to want it, because TDK's ready. The morale might not be there, but the hunger still is. And
Back against the wall.
Careful. Be very careful what you wish for, Nico. I mean, tell me that's not true.
No, it's true. I mean, the back's against the wall. TDK organization, it's not a good place to be, but trying to remain optimistic, stick to the path, stick to the system, and hopefully, the wins start coming, and hopefully that starts with Moist.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to harken back to the Chafe gentleman's favorite quote or favorite motto for himself. He says, "Don't make me screw myself out of a corner, because I will." He uses a different word, but he says it a lot, like a lot. And no truer words have been spoken than this week for a lot of these teams, a lot of these matchups. So for myself, I'd like to thank our guests, the Dark Knights and Patman Jones, as well as Green Eggs and Hamos, our co-host, and House of Pancakes, the other co-host. Thank you, gentlemen. This has been a fantastic episode. I hope to have you back soon, and to prove that state radio only existed for a few years, because this is going to be a long time podcast, and we're going to keep it going every single week. We're going to have new guests on every single week to spice things up. But these guys have been fantastic, and I can't thank you enough.
Thanks for having us, fellas.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. God bless everyone. Good luck this weekend.
Love you guys.